Let's go over FRQ number 2 from set 1 from 2021. So just a reminder that you can't share these PDFs. They are for APSIs and not public yet. At some point they may be public. So take a minute or two or more to read through the question that the students had to answer this year. Again, some students had to answer this one. There were, I think, at least 4 different copies of the paper exam. We got 2 of those sets released. We're doing set 1 to practice. And then take a look at the scoring guidelines and read through those. And then you have 2 samples. You have 2B and you have 2H. To grade. When you're done with that, go ahead and unpause the video and we'll go over the scores for these 2 student samples. All right, so hopefully you have had a chance to do that. 2B did very well. I'm going to tell you right now that they did an 8 overall, so out of 10 points. And let's see where the points are given. For letter A, the place that this student got the points was controlling the populations of potentially harmful organisms like rat that harbor diseases. So that is a point there, so that's +1 there. And then B is correct by saying chemical pesticides are often on unwashed plants that are ingested. There's another point. So sometimes I give myself little markers here to remind myself, +1, +1. And then this one for C1, the only answer the kids could choose was 1975, so 1 point there. And you'll notice by the second student sample that even though this seems like an easy question, it's just a chart question, this person got it wrong. So, you know, students in general, even though it seems like it would be an easy question, students do get these wrong, so they need a lot of practice. And then C2 was actually worth 2 points, and this person got C2 wrong. No, I'm sorry, C2 is correct. It's C3 that's not correct. So this one here, the insect population, now this is not exactly worded by exactly like the scoring guidelines. So one thing I want you to notice here is that their answer did not match one of these 3, but it matched what we're looking for, which is the trend with numbers and evidence. So whenever kids have to describe a graph, they need to add numbers in as much as possible, or even the second example didn't show numbers, but it was very specific, an answer. And so this one was correct, and it was specific with numbers and years, and so that is why C2 is correct. C3 is missed, and here's why. C3, the problem here is that this student is only talking about the pest population. And this is an explain question, and so it needs more explanation than a describe. And so when we look at the original question, and explain questions are the hard points to get, and so there are easy points and there's hard points. So example, 1975 is an easy point to get as long as kid knows how to read a graph. The explain questions here, the student really only talked about this column. The student did not really talk about this, and how you had to keep adding more pesticide as the pests keep getting stronger. And so that part here was missing in C3, which is why that student missed the point there. D is correct for half of it. So this was worth 2 points. So D was the only one here worth 2 points. And the correct answer here was that it causes disease in non-target species, but the the answer here was really only one thing. So even though they talked about food web, which was a separate answer on the key, it's really not different enough. So that whenever they ask for two separate answers, there've got to be two distinct answers. So we need two distinct answers in order to get the 2 points here. And so there are not two distinct answers, which is why they got 1 out of 2 points on D. All right, for E, the description of crop rotation is correct. And then E2, genetically modified crops, is correct. And for E3, it is potentially ingesting the crops with, you also decrease harmful pesticide because you don't need to add them. They're genetically resistant to the pesticide. So that is +1, +1, +1. So the 2 points that are missed are here and here for this. And so that's an 8 out of 10, which is actually an excellent score on FRQs. It is rare to give a 10 on an FRQ. So when you grade students, I don't do a straight curve. So this would not be an 80% in my class because I tell kids it's actually rare to get a 10 out of 10 on the AP test because of things like this explain. Okay, let's do this one. This one was not as good. I'll give you the score ahead of time. This was 2 out of 10. So 2A was wrong because what do they mean by size of food? And pesticides don't increase the size of the foods. And even bigger foods don't mean no more nutrients actually as well. However, this student got a point here for 2B. 2015 is wrong. This is vague. What does that mean? And then the point here is too vague because not all the pests. So they're saying the pests were resistant to it. It's not all the pests were resistant. It's some of the pests. And those words show that the students have to prove that they understand. And by saying the pests were resistant, well, how many? All of them? A few of them? Do they really understand natural selection? Do they really understand what's happening here? And then negatively affect is always too vague. Negatively affect in what way? How does it affect? Is there a specific problem like asthma or some sort of cancer that comes from pesticide use? All right, so the 2D, however, they gave an example. Negatively affect the organisms in the environment by killing off the predator's food. So in this case, here, there's a point. So here's kind of the question of the day here. So in D, let me get to my D real quick to remind myself of it. D was worth 2 points. The first D was too vague. The second D was fine. And so this person got the point for D. For 2E, it's not during seasons. So this person is showing they don't quite understand that farmers switch crops during seasons because some crops don't grow in some seasons. And most of our country, you can't grow in the winter. Now in a place like California, we can grow all winter, but they're different crops because that's what grows at different times of year. So they do not understand that a crop rotation means in summer, you're going to grow a different crop in the same piece of land for different summers. So the summer crop, they're going to switch from year to year. So that's why that one is wrong. And then down here, it's not about erosion. And as kids do that, they just switch agricultural terms all the time. This question is asking about pesticides, and then they're talking about here erosion. Kids always mix up fertilizers and pesticides. They use them interchangeably in sentences. So when we're talking about agricultural terms, I'm constantly reminding them of the vocabulary and don't interchange the vocabulary. And then this goes on to talk more about drip irrigation, which is really not the question here. So that is where the 2 points are for this question, and this is a 2 out of 10.